The term Grand Consomme is not entirely applicable here because I am making this with chicken instead of pheasant. However, the principle is exactly the same, and if you have access to pheasant, so much the better. I've made a couple of small changes based on experience, and I'm also using a pressure cooker instead of a pot sealed with dough because this is the 21st century and not the 18th century. The results are excellent, though. Okay, up till now everything is exactly the same as the chicken soup, except now I'm not picking through and looking for the larger pieces of meat. I'm putting everything that was in the pressure cooker into this pot after, of course, it was sieved, and we're going to add the water to that and bring it to a simmer. Now, once it comes up to a good, healthy simmer, you can start breaking this up a little bit. You know that the meat and the bones now are extremely soft because they've been roasted and then they've been pressure cooked. So getting this to dissolve as much as you can into the liquid won't be that difficult. Give it a stir once in a while. Let it boil away. Not really boil, just a good simmer. Just give it a stir every once in a while. This is what it looks like after about 20 minutes. When I say a stir, I mean kind of more like a mash, because you're really trying to push all the flavor out of that meat. Here we are after 30 minutes. Now this is pretty much a mush, which is exactly what we want. This mush is going to give up all of the flavor when we pass it to the sieve. You want to try to get as much of this liquid out of here as you can. It's like a sponge right now. Try to mash as much through as you can. This is the liquid that came off of that chicken, and here's that super concentrated stock from before. So just for your own edification, take a sip of this, take a sip of this. You'll see how the layers of flavor are built up. Okay, I've got one of the chicken breasts that was salvaged in the beginning. You still got one extra chicken breast. You can do whatever you want with it, but when you make the consomme, you're going to use one of these. I've got the celery and the carrot. I'm just going to give this a coarse chop to begin with. I've got some dried herbs. This would be a good time to use fresh herbs if you want. It's not going to make a huge difference in the end, though. For a restaurant, we would use dried herbs. And I've got these 5 egg whites lightly beaten. Okay, got the vegetables in there. I'll toss these herbs in there. Okay, that's good. Now I got the chicken. I cut this also up into some pieces to help the food processor along here a little bit. Okay, that's good. And now the egg whites. And we don't need to process this heavily. We just want to incorporate it together. Okay, that's good. Now, it's okay if this is a little bit warm when you begin it, but it can't be hot. If it's hot, all that'll happen is this will coagulate immediately and you'll ruin it. So, this gigantic mass goes in here, and we're going to start stirring it as we're heating it. We continue stirring this until it gets to a boil. Once it comes up to a good simmer, really, that's it. No more stirring. This is the #1 way to screw up your consomme. You have to pay attention to it. Make sure that the raft you're making is not sticking to the bottom. And eventually get to the point where you can see it's forming the raft. Now I'm going to turn the heat way down. It was on 7, I'm turning it way down to 2. You can see this raft is formed now. Now no more stirring. Let it sit like this for a little while on number 2. This is what you want to see. You want to see it percolating up through this very slowly. Now it's still hot right now because it was on 7. But it's going to cool off a lot because I turned the heat down to just below 2. And after a few more minutes, just open up a little hole here. Make sure that it has ability to breathe. About every 10 minutes now, you pull some of the stock up and pour it back over the top of the raft. You do this 2 or 3 times. And then you begin very gently drawing off a little bit at a time. It's a painstaking process. Your sieve lined with paper towel or a coffee filter. And begin passing it very slowly and carefully through this. The next morning, you skim the fat off of the top, and you have to be fairly aggressive here. Do a good job and get all the fat off. I've divided this consomme here into 2 separate containers so that I can show you what happens if you're not aggressive enough and you don't skim all of the fat off of the top. You'll see that it will be a disaster. This is your only chance to get rid of all of the fat. This is what happens if you didn't skim it carefully enough. Now you'll have to melt it, re-refrigerate it, and re-skim it again. On the other hand, if you did a careful job, you'll have a perfectly clear consomme like this. If you like my videos, look for my cookbook, now available through Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and other internet bookseller sites. Also look for my cocktail book, Cocktails of the South Pacific and Beyond, Advanced Mixology, available through Amazon online.